what made you decide to make the leap into coaching after being on the corporate end of things for so long, where you managed large numbers of people, to switching to something where it's just you in a very one-on-one situation?
Yeah, it was really an easy decision for me. If I look at myself and knowing myself pretty well, when I left corporate, I knew I was going to continue to do something. So I wasn't going to hang up my business suit and jump on a job on a golf course or start learning how to play pickleball. So I knew that I had a lot more to give, and I had a lot more to do, and a lot more to learn. And so when I looked at those things in my career that I enjoy doing, and if I look at those things in my career that I felt that I was pretty good at, it made every bit of sense to look at pursuing coaching. So, if I look at my work as a leader, whether I'm managing a store or a district or a function, a key element, I think, of my leadership was my coaching. And if I look at my background in HR, it's not always the smartest thing to do, but people have a tendency to look to HR for the answers, right? We're the ones that are the conscious of the company, and while coach doesn't tell people what to do, we're often there to help guide people through a decision. So it took all the things that I loved most about my career, and that I felt that I was pretty good at, and I knew that as a coach I could still enjoy those things going forward, knowing that I had to start over, because there's being a coach in name, and then there's having a modality and credibility through the certification process.
Yeah, although I'll say, and this has been a pet peeve of mine, at least you've got the experience. I've just come across so many quote unquote coaches online who that's their only thing that they do, and you just want some sort of proof of purchase that they've, experienced, the trenches in the real world. And, so I personally, I like that aspect of, you've been in there, you've been in the position that your clients are theoretically in. And so, you've A, had success in that area, and B, you can really speak from that perspective.
I call it empathy. So, if you're dealing with a totally crazed executive who he's crazed or she's crazed because they've got a ton coming at them, challenges, dealing with the pandemic and how it's shifting their business, having a sense of having been in those kind of situations, not a pandemic, but other circumstance, I get one, that I may not be the most important person in their lives, where our work may not be the most important element of what they have going. It may be very important. So I think it gives me a perspective, at least of understanding kind of where a person is based on where I've been, but at the same time, coming at it without judgment, that I can't assume that my experience and how I approach things would be how the person across from me is. But yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah. And you break it down to what you offer on your website as three different kinds of coaching: life coaching, leadership coaching, and career coaching. First off, how often are those distinct silos, and how often do those just kind of bleed into one another?
Yeah, so I'll start with life coaching, because life coaching is in the context of a person and what they want. So it's kind of an open agenda. As a matter of fact, in life coaching, the client comes with the agenda. I don't, as a coach, look at them and assess and say, I think you need to do more of this or less of that. So they clearly come with an openness about what they want in their life. If you're a leadership coach, it's the same thing. It's life coaching, but it's in the context of who they want to become as a leader, or how they want to influence and show up in the world. So the topic or the subject, if you will, is in the context of being a leader, but it's life coaching. I mean,
Yeah.
I typically, well, I won't go into it, but, and then if I look at career coaching, I can tell someone how to write a resume, how to do a good interview, how to network better than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
But career coaching isn't job search coaching. It can be a part of it, but it isn't. And if I think about, once again, life coaching,
Mm-hmm.
it's really coming at them as a person coming into the relationship, the coaching relationship, through the context of who they want to be professionally. And so I often, as a differentiator, say, I never thought that being a life coach, because I wasn't a life coach until I became certified.
Mm-hmm.
I I now see that the aspect of being a life coach with the discipline and following their methodology really enhances my capability as a leadership coach and as a career counselor.
Mm.
And ultimately, if I go back, so this is kind of the circular, if I go back to life coaching, the person who shows up as a whole, fully resourceful, capable person, oh, by the way, they also have aspirations of how they want to lead in the world. And I don't mean lead a store or an organization, how they lead their life. And so there's a lot of overlap, but the foundation, if you will, or the secret sauce that affects or is a part of every part of my coaching is the life coaching.
That's really interesting. I've never heard anyone express leadership coaching like that. Usually people just use the typical direct definition of you are leading a group of people, you are leading a company. And I don't know, I find it rare that anyone comes at it from the idea of self leadership or exploring the different ways that particular term can be used. And have you always approached it that way, or did that kind of evolve?
Yeah. So if I think about my life as a leader or as a manager or running a function, I always saw the people that I worked with in the context of them being kind of the stewards of their career, the stewards of how they want to show up, the fact that they have complexities in their life. So I see them as someone who works for me or a key part of my team. But I also know that person has a life beyond the business, and they perhaps lead as a family member, as a parent, and so I think I've always assumed that inherent in all of us, regardless of what we're doing, is a sense of being a leader, which to me, it's how do I show up in a way that I represent the best part of me? And how do I show up so that I can help whatever situation I'm in, whether it's me as a teacher, me as a parent, me as a son, me as a father? How do I want to show up in a way that I can be a good influence? And at the end of the day, that's really what leadership is, my opinion.
Yeah. And, as you alluded to before, you don't come in with any preconceived notions about who you're working with, what they want to accomplish. So that, to me, begs the question, what makes for a good client? What do people need to bring to the table personally with you so that you can really hit the ground running with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would tell you is, the expression coming at something being fully in, okay, having a stake in the outcome, seeing the work as important, and it's all kind of inner driven, and a passion to accomplish something that they have never prior to this have been able to accomplish, and have a strong passion and desire for that, is the ideal client. It makes my job so easy. And that isn't always the case, particularly in a corporate environment. People don't go to their boss and say, I want to coach. The organization goes to them and says, oh, we think it would be good for your development to have a coach.
Mm-hmm.
The first question is usually, well, what's wrong? And oftentimes, if I end up with a potential client that comes in a little bit apprehensive or not really wondering why I'm here, I know my boss wants me here, but why am I here? We can work with that in the first meeting, but at the end of the day, I can't in good conscience be a good coach for someone who isn't bringing their passion and interest and curiosity and into that relationship.
Well, then,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, the and kind of goes back to don't come in with any preconceived notions. That's the hardest part of coaching, because as humans, particularly in Western culture, we're always judging. I mean, we walk up the aisle in the grocery store and we look at people and we judge them. We don't kind of like consciously do it, but we kind of put people in categories. And as a coach, you can't do that.
It's Ed Stapleton.
Yeah.
You can't. So that was the end.
Mm-hmm. Right. So no, that's a good point. That that must take a bit of work on your part, just being able to come in and say, okay, this is a blank slate. I'm not going to assume. Although I would think a lot of people come in not necessarily knowing which road they want to go down, because and then especially in today's times, with the pandemic and all the madness that has been 2020, it would seem like people would come to you with a distinct lack of direction, not really knowing what's even possible anymore. How do you, without getting specific about individual people, how do you help them with that?
So I have a good example, and I'll sanitize it. Oftentimes, I'll work with someone who is right out of school or a year out of college, and they don't have a clue what they want to do. They're lost, and they have kind of either a side hustle or what I call a survivor job. And so they will bring me into their lives. And I think the assumption is that I'm going to have the answer. Or the assumption is that I'm going to give them a number of assessments, which I've got in my toolbox, and that somehow through those assessments, the answer of what is the end game of their life that they want to pursue. And if any coach ever tells you that exists, run. So oftentimes in the first session, which is complimentary, I just want to give people the opportunity to know how I think and how I approach coaching in a situation where what I've described, I will clearly say to the person, you and I are going on a journey. And right now, I totally accept the fact that you're like, I don't know what's next. I don't know what I want to do. And that's fine. But ultimately, through conversation, through questions and curiosity, we're going to figure it out together. And so usually a little bit of disappointment. You mean you're not going to tell me what to do after 2 meetings?
Yeah.
I say, if I were to do that, number one, chances are I'll be wrong. And number two, it shows such a lack of disrespect for you. That somehow you don't have enough about who you are and where you've been and a good sense of who you are that you need me to tell you what to do. So, and that kind of is an example, but it applies in so many different aspects of coaching. A leader, oh, okay, so you're a coach, you're going to tell me how to be a better leader. Hell no. So it's getting people to see that my job isn't to tell them what to do or to fix them. My job is to be almost like a Sherpa or someone who's got like one of those minor helmets with a light. And I guide them through asking the right questions. being curious, going places with them that no one probably would go, even people that are, whether it's a parent, whether it's a significant relationship. Part of it
Yeah.
is the courage to have the conversation that ultimately unlocks the door for them.
And it's interesting that you say that you work with a lot of people who are about, 1 year out of college. Um, this is something I've talked about with friends a lot and things of that nature, because I've, I've had some great education myself, but I don't necessarily believe that it gave me the tools for figuring out my path post college. Also, I got pretty good at school itself. How they, this is what is expected of you. This is what they gave you. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to accomplish. And they, set a path for you. And then you get out into the quote real world, and suddenly you're, I don't know, you just somewhat ill prepared for that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if that's, is it even possible for schools to um give people this kind of direction, or are they just not necessarily built for that?
I think first, I think schools, primarily schools that teach you a vocation. So if it's business school, law school, there can be a lot more in the process of having people go through an exploration of what may be the next step.
Mm-hmm.
So most don't, and those that do are too formulaic, if you will. So I think they can do a better job. Here's so I'm going to bring you behind the curtain.
Okay.
And this is where I go from being coach and I get curious to tell you what my experience is. So I'm kind of consulting now. I'm telling you what I think people should know about what you've described as I'm out a year and I'm lost and I don't know what to do. Number one, people know a lot more than they think they know. Always. They can look at their lives and say, here's what I enjoy. Boy, here's what I hate. Oh, I love that. I hate that. Here are the kind of situations I like to put myself in. So people don't think about, they think of work as kind of the construct of a role, a job description, or a position inside a company. And that is one perspective. But if I look at someone who's in career chaos and doesn't know what's next, they know more than they think they know. The second thing is, it's not easy. And what do I mean by that? I think people look at examples. They'll say, gosh, I read this thing or I saw on TV about this person who said at the age of 5, I knew I wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
Those people are so rare. They're like literally 0.00001 of 1% of the world. So people see that and they say, what's wrong with me? Why am I so lost? The bottom line is, for most of us, if we follow those things that we enjoy and give us, satisfaction or happiness or a sense of making a difference, if we follow that lead and look at what's possible in terms of different roles or different kind of companies or different industries, what I tell people is you can't make a mistake at this point. You don't have to have the answer, my opinion, of here's the industry, here's the job, here's the kind of discipline that I want to get into. I see it as more like an exploration where they try something, and if it doesn't work, they pivot. But at the point where they pivot, one of our favorite words, right, Chris? they have so much more data. And to try to make a decision right out of school without a lot of data, other than the data looking in the rearview mirror, there's a little bit of trial and error. So another thing that kind of people don't really believe me when I meet them for the first time, using the example of someone coming out of school, I said, chances are you can't make a mistake at this point. So take a deep breath. The decision you make with us working together isn't going to be a make it or break it. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. But now that's funny because back when I worked in the corporate world, inevitably during an interview, there would come the standard question of where do you see yourself in 5 years? And my typical answer was, when I was in college, the internet didn't exist. So I've I've given up predicting where anything is going, you know. And kind of along the same lines of what we've been talking about, you had a really cool line in your latest blog post where you wrote, our perception of reality is an illusion, which I thought was really quite fascinating. And I'm wondering how much of your work with your clients is about changing their perception.
I would say if it's not close to 100%, it's at least somewhere between 90 and 100%, because ultimately, it kind of goes back to our conversation around we're all the architects of our life. We're leaders in the context of how we want to show up. How we show up is more often than not our perception of how we see ourselves or how we see others or how we see a situation. And at the same time, there are other people's perceptions of us. So we walk in with kind of our perception of how we see things, and then others who know us or have experience with us, they walk into the situation with their preconceived notions of how we show up. So if you look at that, and that's, it's like being the young brother or the oldest brother. You have a sense of how you are to be. And the illusion part of it is it's all made up. We all make it up. The people who are judging us make it up, and we walk in and say, okay, I'm the youngest person here. I'm the most junior person here. I better act in accordance with that. So as a coach, my job is through conversation, have them see those hidden rules about who they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to show up, those preconceived notions, okay? And then what I do, much like a mirror, is I put it in front of them and say, you and I have talked about it, your goals, your coaching goals, how does these perceptions measure towards you getting to that goal? It's almost all of coaching is helping people see who they are through their eyes and asking the question, is that who you want to be? And to the extent that you have aspirations, how's it working for you?
Okay, cool.
Am I speaking kind of too theoretical or
no, I don't think so, because I think it is a radical. It has to be a radical shift in how you think, and also, I think as you pointed out, a lot of people have more tools in their toolbox than they really realize, and so. And I think that's a misconception with coaching, is that they come in and say, okay, you're going to do this, like something really down to detail of, do this 5 times, do this 10 times, and then you'll get to X. And so, I can see how it would just be a shift in perception. And that's, a challenging thing to explain.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier about modality of coaching. And there's buckets. Whenever you're coaching someone, you have to have a sense, what is the conversation I'm having right here with this human being? And one of those buckets is perception. And perception is perspective, is what they call it, but perception, perspective. Perspective is, how does the person see the world? How do they see the situation? It's like when I talked about the first meeting in coaching, their perspective is that, geez, Bob's going to have the answer. And then we have to look at that. Is that really what we want here? You want me to tell you? I might as well have like a crystal ball, right?
Right.
Anyway, is that helpful?
Yeah, no, definitely. And then finally, one thing I'm wondering, so many businesses, so many people in the business world are obsessed with measuring progress in every field. And I'm wondering, how do you measure progress in the work that you do? Is it even possible to measure it?
That's great. Once again, and this is why you're good at what you do, is that is a profound and great question. Measuring progress is really important. I think it's the dynamic that motivates us as humans. It's a sense that we can kind of find out where we are and where we want to go and where we've been. So measuring progress, while important, should only be seen through the eyes of the client. Let me say that again, because it's kind of a radical thought. Typically, it's the boss who measures the progress.
Right.
But if I think of me as a coach, and this kind of goes with what I said earlier about coming in with either a preconceived notion or a judgment. If I see me as the arbiter of progress, one, it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what the person, the human being across from you, sees as progress. Because so often we call it kind of self-regulating. If I don't see someone making progress, I go into my head and saying, what's wrong with me? I mustn't be a good coach. Something's not happening here. Or what's wrong with that? That will destroy. It's the most toxic thinking. And so if I think about progress, it's clearly in the eyes of the person who's across from you, the client, and having them be able to see it. And this kind of slides back to perception or perspective. Measuring progress is a perspective on how you're doing. And I think the job as a coach is to recognize and having the person see where they are through their own lens. Because as humans, we typically are pretty hard on ourselves. We don't give ourselves enough credit. Or if we're thinking we want to shoot to the moon or solve world hunger, that any progress short of that is failure. And that's a perspective, but it's one that prevails too often.
Yeah. All right. Well, that takes care of all of my questions. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about?
Well, it's funny. I do blogs, so I wanted to talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
So I'm going to be respectful of your time. I think the question that I would have liked you to ask me, so I'm kind of coming in with my own perspective here.
Cool.
Is how what you do in your business, like coaching.
In other words, you're asking me that, or that's what
I wanted you to ask me that so I could give you what I think is your genius.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I just not so genius, and then it took me a few minutes to understand what you were saying. So in other words, how is my work of developing content for businesses and bands? How is that similar to coaching work that you do, in other words?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have two thoughts.
Okay, great.
So this is a shameless promotion of you based on what I know about you. The first is you have the curiosity of a coach. You had the mindset of coming into every conversation or every interview with kind of a blank slate. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do your homework and know, but you literally let the energy of what's happening in the moment kind of guide the next step. And that's what a coach does. The coach shows up and creates a vessel to have a good conversation versus just a conversation. And I think that your openness, your curiosity, your keen instinct of wanting to understand and know what is the magic of the band that you're working with or the client And I know magic it's not a business term, but it's what is the essence that makes this person unique, I think is a gift that you have.
No, well, thank you.
And I think the other way that you're like a coach is, I don't know if you play an instrument. I don't know you well enough, but let's assume for a second that you don't.
Okay.
Or that you don't play it as well as some of the musicians that you cover. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I always tell people I'm an awful drummer.
So what I find is what you bring to a relationship. You don't have to know a business the way the person who founded that business or running that business. You don't need to be as good a musician of the bands that you represent. What you bring is a unique talent about how to take what they are, or the essence of who they want to be, and leverage internet, leverage your knowledge of social media, your genius in that space to bring it forward. So, for me, I can coach a physician, and I can tell you right now, Cris, you don't want me operating on you or even prescribing medicine for you, but I can help that human being accomplish what they want. And if I look at your business, whether it's the new hustle that you're looking at getting in beyond bands, you can go into just about any either discipline or profession or type of business, because that isn't what you bring. You don't bring an intimate knowledge of what it is they do. You bring a genius for understanding what that is, and then using that information to leverage it in this world we call the internet and social media. So you're like a coach in that regard.
Oh, well, thank you. I
am complete.
I take that as high praise.
Good. I've enjoyed this. I really have. I'm usually on the other end, so I like the laziness of sitting back and being asked.
Oh yeah. No, I'm much more comfortable not being asked things. And then, speaking of which, you have a podcast that is going to be kicking off soon, right?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, it's a long time in coming, but it's a podcast called Bob and Joyce, OD and HR Talk. OD stands for Organizational Development. And I don't know if you remember, or your viewers or listeners remember Car Talk, Click and Clack.
Oh yeah, I love those guys.
It was an NPR show about cars.
Yeah.
Those guys are great, and they're funny and they're goofy, but damn, they knew cars.
Yeah.
And so Joyce and I, she's great in OD, organizational development. I'm okay in OD, and my background's HR, but we've worked together off and on through our careers. So it's our opportunity to show the power of OD and HR. But we want to do it in the spirit of who we are, which is having fun, taking what we do seriously. So having really good conversations, but to create an environment where people can kind of get a break and get away. So hopefully by the first of the year, we'll be out there on all the podcasts, platforms.
No, that's
thanks
cool.
for the plug.
Sure. And that's, I think that's a great description in the sense that, what were their names? Tom and Ray Magliazzi, I think was their last name, something like that. The Car Talk guys.
Yes.
That's
exactly right.
I'm not a car guy, I don't, I've never, I don't work on cars or any of that kind of stuff, but that was the great aspect of their show is you didn't have to be, it was still entertaining and interesting to listen to. So, I like that you've set it so that yours will be, similar. You don't have to be an expert in either of these categories to take something from it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We're kind of focusing on working with OD and HR professionals, and hopefully over time we'll do live shows, live streams. But you're exactly right. I mean, you can be the manager of a new business, thinking about opening a business. scratching your head with where do I go with the culture of the business I've started, you don't have to be an OD expert. And I think your analogy to not knowing cars, I mean, literally, my son was trying to hit the brake, engage the brake, and he opened my hood in my 2015 Enclave. And I said, you know, Matt, I appreciate you doing that. I've never looked under my hood. So after 6 years. So yeah, that's, you've captured the spirit of who we want to be and how we want to show up.